Hello, my name is Zachary Capitano, and this is Where It Leads. It's a podcast about how people live and what they do during that life. It is my goal to help people find their path through hearing stories of how other people have found theirs.
Today I'm going to be interviewing my wife, Michaela Capitano. She is an assassin for the government. She is a paraeducator. Now, Michaela, what is a paraeducator?
A paraeducator is someone who typically assists in a classroom of students with disabilities, and we help take teacher lessons and put them in ways that the students can better understand, and we help with things like assessing those benchmarks and any behavioral issues the student may have or anything like that. Our goal is to help the teacher teach.
That's interesting. Now, I guess my first question would probably be, how did you get started in this career path?
Growing up, I always wanted to be a teacher and work with kids, and that was always kind of my goal. And after high school, I was wanting to kind of get into that field, and I kept applying to different different retail places, and I wasn't getting any call back, nothing. And so then my mom actually told me that I could become an instructional aide or paraeducator without a degree, as long as I am working on it. And so I became certified and got the job. Applied and got the job.
And you were how old again?
I was 18 when I 19. I had just turned 19 when I started my first job in the classroom, because it took about 6 months altogether to fully get hired.
Okay, and so you kind of knew what you wanted to do from a very young age.
Yes. Even in kindergarten, I would line up all my stuffed animals and teach them the math that I was learning.
That's cool. Yeah, I know I would have liked to have known. I've done all kinds of different things, which is why why I want to do this podcast.
Right. And I think that's really cool too. I feel boring sometimes, but my job is really interesting to me, so that's what matters.
So your job must make you feel good too, helping kids, figure out life.
Yes, for sure. So next school year will actually be my 10th school year as a permanent paraeducator, instructional aide. So I have worked with children ages 0 all the way through age 22 with different disabilities, and it makes me feel so good to know that I had an impact, even if it's just a minute one, on so many different students and people. So yeah, it makes me feel good for the most part, day in and day out.
Yeah, well, it should. I mean, and paraeducator, though, you being a paraeducator, you work with kids with disabilities and mental. How would you say it?
Neurodiversities.
Neurodiversities. Okay.
Right. So they think differently than who you would consider normal, and they think differently and they oftentimes act differently. So some students may have difficulties with regulating their emotions and things like that. So we help them through situations like that when they're not able to regulate themselves enough to be able to learn in a classroom, the academics.
So I want to talk about some of the pros and cons of your job. Let's start with the cons. Why not? Because then we can end on a good point.
Okay.
So what are some of the parts of the job that you can barely stand but live with because you obviously love your career?
Right. So
and ignore my cat. He's just trying to get in here because he wants to be part of the podcast.
So yeah, definitely there are some drawbacks. First of all, being the pay. So, as I said, we work with students who may have difficulties regulating their behaviors, and so that may include them throwing things or hitting or kicking or biting, general just kind of defiance. So the pay versus how I'm qualified to deal with those certain situations is not equal. And
like, I just got spit on and bit. Pay me.
No.
Okay.
I just, I started this job making about $11 an hour, and now, when I moved, well, not now, but when I moved districts 3 years ago, I had been with that district for 6 years, and I was at the top of the pay scale at $15 an hour. And I make a little bit more now, but it's not enough pay to be able to raise a family on and live in California. So, with the experience and the things that we do as paras. So, that's one drawback for sure. And another one is, certain teachers. So in my role, we listen to what the teacher wants to teach. And, we work under a credentialed teacher, and not all teachers do their job or interpret their job equally. It's kind of the equivalent, like everyone reads the same driver's handbook, but not everybody drives the same. Exactly. Exactly. So different personalities when it comes to teachers and stuff like that can be difficult.
So using that logic, like if a teacher doesn't like the way you're doing it, you just run him over.
No.
Okay.
No.
I just wanted to make sure, because if I knew that I was able to do that at my job, I probably would have.
No, if I don't agree with a teacher the way that they are doing things, we'll have a conversation about it later, and I will ask if...
With the cement shoes, right?
I'll ask if there's a different way that they can think of to possibly do it. We have a conversation, Yeah. And, but it is encouraging to continue my schooling to be able to be the teacher one day or higher.
So you're currently, while you're working, you're actually in school too?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and is this what you want to do? Are you going to be a teacher, or is this just one of the things you have in mind?
So currently, I work for a school district where my union is actually paying for my college, which is incredible.
That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. So I believe that I am going to... they're paying for my education in hopes to build future teachers, because right now California is experiencing a massive teacher shortage. And So I believe that I will teach for 3 to 5 years after I earn my degree. And from that, while I will be working on other coursework to actually become a behavioral intervention specialist to work with students who have behavioral difficulties.
Okay. Because, I mean, you are my wife. We do live together, and you do tell me things.
Yes.
Occasionally when you're not yelling at me.
Oh,
or,
stop.
flogging me, which...
Anyway.
I'm not going to say whether that's a good or a bad thing. Anyway, I've heard you talk before about wanting, maybe even, I don't know what the word would be, like, maybe moving on to doing more HR type things within the
District.
business, within the district.
Right.
Are you still thinking about doing that?
Well, there's a pay incentive with going that direction. However, I don't believe that I am a person that would be able to sit behind a desk all day long. Right. I would miss the students. And I know HR does a whole lot more than just sit there all day. But, yeah, I like to be moving. I like to be active. I like to be able to work with the students, either one-on-one or in a classroom, and see how they think and really experience the people, the students.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I know, it takes a certain kind of person to want to do this job, though, because of the cons, which
right.
we're going to get into right now.
Right.
And one of which would be the physical properties of this job. Now, what are those, and in regards to the cons?
Oh man, cons. I tend to see those as pros. Because it keeps me healthy. But so the
glass half full.
Yeah, right. So some of the physical drawbacks to the job may include things like, like I said earlier, getting spit on, bit, kicked, hit,
run over,
Actually, working at the high school, I did have a student who almost hit me with a car.
Really?
Yeah. He was very...
Now, was this the same kind of student? Was this... obviously, you work with elementary school right now.
Yes.
So he was driving.
Oh, yeah, he wasn't a third grader behind the wheel. Okay. So he... I'm
like, tough school.
Right? No. We're accelerated. No. I worked at a high school for about 6 years. And in that time, we had students who had severe neurodiversities. Okay. And I wanted to get him out of the classroom one day, and I didn't feel like it was safe for him to be in the room anymore. And the teacher I was working with, she felt that he needed to stay in the classroom. So with my opinion on wanting to remove him from the situation, he didn't like that. So the next morning I was putting on my coat outside of my car.
So
and
like he was in a fight
he came
with
at
another
me
kid
with
or something, and you broke them up, and he wasn't happy that you did that.
No, he was throwing things. I'm trying not to be too specific because of this student. But
I aim to not use people's real names for the most part. The only reason I'm saying your name is because you agreed to it.
Yes.
But I'm not going to say the names of the schools you worked at or the names of any students. But we can talk about specific situations. Right.
So yeah, with that, he the next morning he he was driving on his way to the student parking lot, I'm assuming, and he started speeding up toward me from down the road, and he came near, like, probably about a foot. I mean, it felt a lot closer, but probably about a foot from me, and cut in front of my car that was parked. And then he parked there and got out and went in smirking, knowing what he had done. So but yeah, back to the cons. Hey now. I'm still like, I hope he's out there doing well, honestly.
And that's why you were a teacher, because you can think of it that way.
Back to the cons, some of the physical ones with the little ones that I'm working with.
I would have done like a triple roll, and then I would have taken out my 9 and blown up the car by shooting the gas tank.
Oh my goodness, there's a reason you don't work with children.
I guess so.
So...
But no, like, I could see... Probably for most people, the hardest part about your job would be trying to keep a cool head,
yes,
and be able to handle the students and the way you're supposed to, because you've got a lot of rules, right? Of how you can handle physical situations.
Correct, right. So there are many rules in the book.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I also would have said something like, "See you in hell."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
So yeah, there are many rules. And it is difficult sometimes to keep a calm head when the student you're working with is elevated. So I've seen other paraeducators or aides actually get into
like physical
arguments, not physical, but very close, like elevating the student into that emotional state where they wanted to swing on them or things like that. And as in our role, our job is to de-escalate those situations. That's what we're there for, so that their academics and their peers' academics aren't impacted too greatly. So we are paid to keep our cool in stressful situations.
In certain situations, you will have to, like, pry apart kids, right? Especially if it's a high school or...
Oh, pry apart. That's...
Well, you know what I mean.
Right.
Like, you know, grab them to keep them from... you know, wrestling each other down to the ground and punching each other, you know, that kind of thing.
Right. So, it heavily depends on the situation. So at the high school, I had many students who were bigger and stronger than I was, and I knew that. So if I didn't know the students, and they were fighting in the hallway outside of our classroom or whatever, we actually had campus security that would come in, and they were trained to deal with that. If a situation arose in our classroom, usually the teacher that I worked with and we had a good rapport with majority of our students, despite the last story. We had a really good rapport, so before they got to that point, a lot of times we were able to remove one of the we would just look at each other, me and her, the teacher and I, and we would just walk over and like, hey, what's happening? And if the students continued to yell or try to swing or fight on each other even more, then one student would be removed, and I would just try to sit the other one down and talk through what they were going through. There was one situation where they started a full-on fist fight in our classroom. They went over desks, and they ended up ruining one of our colored printers that was just donated to our class. And in that situation, we did not feel safe to intervene. So we evacuated the rest of the students. I took them outside of the classroom, and then the teacher had the other students in the classroom who continued to fight, and she called the office, and the campus came, and there were consequences from there. But
so this all brings up another thing I really wanted to ask you about. Now that's mandated reporting. Now why don't you explain to us what mandated reporting is and how it affects you?
Oh, okay. So mandated reporting is under the law, I am required to report any safety concerns, any whatsoever, of any child or disabled person, period. Or,
like if they get...
I forgot the specific groups. I feel like I'm on the spot now. So any, like, I don't want to say disadvantaged, but any groups that may not be able to fully advocate for themselves or recognize that they are being abused.
Okay, so like if you see a kid with a black eye, you might ask him some questions, and if he says something like, yeah, my dad hit me, you are, by law, you have to report that.
Yes.
And do a report on it.
Yes. And I have even followed up with some of those to to make sure that it was properly reported, especially if it's a situation like that where the student blatantly says, this person did this to me. A lot of times, though, we've encountered that students don't want to tell us, which is why the mandated reporting is so crucial in this position, because
you have to do the difficult decision, basically.
Well, right. And at the end of the day, that is their parent or guardian, or
I think that would be really hard for a lot of people. I know it would be hard for me, because you take it personally and think, what would I think if some teacher was trying to tell me how to do this or that, but you got to look out for the best interest for your students.
Number one, right. And we don't contact the parents. We do not, we see something concerning, and it's not our job to investigate or anything like that. That is what other departments in our society are for. Right. So if we do see a child with a black eye and he said, "Oh, I fell," I mean, we "Oh, really? How did you fall?" And yeah, there's a lot of times a slim chance that a child will show up with a black eye from a fall. Right. So from there, even that is warrant enough to make a call. Yeah. Even if we suspect it, it's the law to call and report. And with the mandated reporting legalities too, I even had one of my best friends, she's a single mom with 2 kids of herself, and she sometimes gets shocked at the things that teachers will make a report on just because of suspected things. But I would much rather be too careful and have the proper authorities investigate than have even one child slip and the situation wind up fatal. So, yeah.
That like I said before, it takes a certain kind of personality to be able to weed out the emotional aspect of this, and
right,
and concentrate on what is legal and what's best.
And with the mandated reporting legalities too, I even had one of my best friends, she's a single mom with 2 kids of herself, and she sometimes gets shocked at the things that teachers will make a report on just because of suspected things. But I would much rather be too careful and have the proper authorities investigate that. So right now I work with students who are in 3rd grade, and they are all somewhere on the autism spectrum. So some of the pros of working with them is the fruits of our labor, so to speak. We are constantly working on things like the calendar and what day of the week it is and what day yesterday was and what day tomorrow will be, and just general time spatial things. And when a student who's struggling with that actually has a revelation and they get the day of the week right, and it warms my soul when they give back the information that they show that they're actually learning and growing as humans. It's amazing. And another pro is gifts. We are whether it's flowers from the field that they spent their recess picking, or gifts from the parents are always welcome too. One time, a student at the high school actually gave me a fish. Ferrari. A fish. They were all... He and his friends were trading betta fish, and they would bring them in little water bottles to school every day, and they would trade them and talk about them, and he was really into it. And I saw one day, and I was like, hey, that's really cool. And he asked if I wanted one. I said, oh, no, thank you. I don't need a fish. And then the next day, he says, Miss Brown, I brought you a fish. I'm like, what? And he took out this water bottle and put this beautiful purple and pink fish on my desk. I was like, oh, thanks. I had to go and buy a fish tank and everything after work.
Well, it's nice that they think of you, though.
Yes, for sure. And truly, it is the thought that counts. I save.
And it wasn't like a dead fish rolled up in a newspaper, because I'm pretty sure that means he's going to, like, send you swimming with the fishes.
Yeah, no, there were no more threats like that. Oh, but, okay. Excuse me, no more. There were no threats like that at all. And I also keep I keep as many drawings and artwork as I possibly can from students. I still have one where this student, she was in 6th grade when I first started working, my first or second year. And she drew something on a piece of purple paper, and I was like, oh, thank you. And it kept blowing away while I was supervising recess. And so she actually taped it to a piece of cardboard, and she graduated high school 2 years ago, but I still have it in my drawer.
That's nice that you keep some of that stuff.
Yes, I love it. It brings...
Do you have specific students that, like, you remember more than the others for those kind of reasons?
Oh, yes.
Like, so, they were harder to help, but you were able to help them, type of thing?
Yes, or, like, the very special moments I had with them. So this particular student, she would not talk. She had the full ability to talk, to speak, and everything, and she would not. And I am a very loud person, but I got to sit with her and work with her a lot, and she would just whisper ever so slightly to me, and I would be like, what? I can't hear you. What? And so sometimes she would write me notes or things like that. And we developed that rapport when she was in 6th grade. And then I had her again her freshman year. And she was still pretty quiet, but she would always hide all of my like highlighters one day, or she would rearrange the caps on all my markers. So I'd go to pick up a pink Crayola marker and it was actually black. And
twerp.
Right. Yeah, so she really sticks out to me because
you go to reach for a black and it's like a piranha.
Oh no. So she really resonates with me, and she impacted my life as much as I did hers, because I was able to sit there and listen to her communication without her words. You know, I thought she was a fascinating person even in 6th grade, and I really, really liked her, and we would play jump rope on during recess or basketball or whatever, and she made me that drawing when she was in 6th grade, and I just put it in my drawer, and then I was pleasantly surprised to have her again, catch up with her in high school.